Good morrow to you, and welcome to the Baron's News Desk, covering the latest happenings and goings-on in the world of tabletop card gaming. With the full deck lists of the Commander 2019 box sets, one of the most talked about legendary creatures to be featured in that product is Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. For 4 generic and 3 Phyrexian mana, meaning that we can pay a black or 2 life for each one of those symbols, he's a 2/2 legendary creature horror minion. He has lifelink. For each black in a mana cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. Whenever you cast a black spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. Simply put, this commander turns all black mana symbols on cards into Phyrexian mana. While many of the content creators on the YouTubes have latched onto cards such as Necropotence and Doomsday as the low-hanging fruit of cards we will likely include in this deck, I would like to focus on some that might not be as obvious. If you are currently planning on creating a Kirik Son of Yawgmoth deck, here are 10 cards that I believe you should consider. Number 10. Baneful Omen. For 4 black, it is an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. With a converted mana cost of 7, it is unlikely that this enchantment will make it into any commander decks. All we have to do is reveal a card off the top of our library that is at least a converted mana cost of 2, and now we have paid 6 life to deal 6 damage and thus has cancelled each other out. And of course, each damage dealt on top of it is going to get that much more value from this enchantment. Number 9. Liege of the Pit. For 5 black, it is a 7/7 creature demon. It has flying and trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature other than Liege of the Pit. If you can't, Liege of the Pit deals 7 damage to you. It has morph of 4 black symbols. This means we can play this card for its morph cost for only 3 generic mana, that is rather cheap. And to pay that morph cost, we can pay 8 life, or in any combination of the black mana and life, in order to activate his morph ability. And of course, there are so many things that we can do with a 7/7 flying trample in Commander. The element of surprise is with us. Number 8. Saurons Vengeance. For 4 generic and 3 black mana, it is a sorcery. Saurons Vengeance deals 10 damage to target player or planeswalker, and you gain 10 life. Again, without Kirik, Saurons Vengeance is rather expensive and is not going to make it into that many black decks. However, if we pay the life instead of the black, this card essentially becomes pay 4 to gain 4 life and deal 10 damage. Now that is certainly valuable. Number 7. Army of the Damned. For 5 and black, it is a sorcery. Create 13 tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. It has flashback of 7 and 3 black. This card will be especially useful if you have a card on the board such as a Phyrexian Altar or an Ashnod's Altar, where you can sacrifice these zombie tokens to get even more mana. And of course, Kirik will also allow for us to pay for the flashback cost also with life rather than having to pay the black mana. All of a sudden, paying 12 generic mana for 26 zombie creature tokens doesn't seem like such a bad deal after all. Especially if we have a card such as Zulaport Cutthroat also on the board. We could sack all of those creature tokens to deal 26 damage to all of our opponents and gain 26 life. Number 6. Stronghold Overseer. For 3 black, it is a 5/5 creature demon. It has flying and shadow. Pay 2 black. Creatures with shadow get +1/+0 until end of turn. And creatures without shadow get -1/-0 until end of turn. This card offers us some protection against decks that like to go wide, especially those that like to populate and create many tokens that we might not be able to block all of those tokens. However, if we choose to pay the 2 black or of course, the life with the Phyrexian mana, we can reduce the power cost of those creatures and ensure that we cannot get overrun by a horde of tiny tokens. Number 5. Temporal Extortion. For 4 black mana, it is a sorcery. When you play Temporal Extortion, any player may pay half his or her life rounded up. If a player does, counter Temporal Extortion. With Karik, we can play this card rather early in the game, therefore it is highly unlikely that most players are going to sacrifice nearly 20 of their life to prevent you from taking an extra turn. Regardless of which point in the game you play it, it is likely never going to be a dead card in your hand. Number 4. Underworld Dreams. For 3 black mana, it is an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Underworld Dreams deals 1 damage to him or her. Paying 6 life to put this card out on the board will certainly pay for itself just in 2 turns alone if the opponents draw a card just during their main draw step. However, we're going to get additional value for every turn that it stays on the board subsequently, and of course, if our opponents continue to draw cards. This can also serve as some protection against some of those commander decks where their commanders can be turned into draw engines to continuously keep their hands full. Number 3. Zombie Trailblazer. For 3 black mana, it is a 2/2 creature zombie. Tap an untapped zombie you control. Target land becomes a swamp until end of turn. Tap an untapped zombie you control, and target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. By paying 6 life, we can play the Zombie Trailblazer and use him to tap himself to give Karik Swamp Walk. And of course, we're going to be loading up those +1 counters on him, and he has lifelink, so we want to be able to ensure that he can deal some damage to get some back of that life we are paying to cast these cards. And of course, being in a black deck, we're going to be running Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, to turn all lands into swamps, and now Karik can have his choice of which opponent to hit in the face and get that delicious lifelink. Number 2. Dawn of the Dead. For 2 and 3 black mana, it is an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. For a converted mana cost of 5, it's easy to see why this card does not see a whole lot of play in Commander, why you could just as easily run a card such as Animate Dead and get value right away. But now consider that we can cast this for only 2 generic mana, and of course enchantments are notoriously difficult to get rid of compared to other permanents, so it is likely we are going to get extended value off this card in the long run. And if we have some form of sacrifice outlet, such as Phyrexian Altar on the board, which I mentioned earlier, we can simply sacrifice to the Phyrexian Altar, and then that creature can go back to the graveyard instead of having to remove it from the game at the end of the turn. And my number 1 recommendation of cards you should consider for your Karik deck is Phyrexian Obliterator. For 4 black mana, it is a creature horror. It has Trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. There are so many ways in which we can abuse this card. Of course, first of all, it says, simply go away, don't attack me. If you attack into this, you're going to lose permanents. But this is a 5/5 essentially for free, for 0 mana, paying 8 life instead. And there are so many sacrifice effects that we could use to absolutely make this a broken card. And finally, commoners, I would like to know your thoughts. Are there any cards for Karik, son of Yawgmoth, that you know of that have not been suggested already? What other hidden gems do you think are out there for this incredibly explosive deck? Be sure to like and subscribe, and view many of my entertaining and informative videos here on Aristocards. Until next time, cheers!